ladies and gentlemen, I have finally returned. The Dungeon Tutor here for you once more to answer all of your questions about the role-playing game world, to show you new things and new developments in role-playing games, and to try to look good doing it. I hope to show you a lot of new things with this new wing of the Dungeon Tutor library, including all the new games that I've discovered, including how-tos, character creation, and a bit of insight here and there about what actually goes into gaming that might give you some new ideas, leaning on my perspective that I will share with you. I'm very happy to have you here and hope that we can have many great adventures together. So, if you're ready, I certainly am. Let's get into an episode of The Dungeon Tutor. Hello friends and welcome. I am the Dungeon Tutor. Today is day 2 of RPGaDay 2026. And today, like all days of RPGaDay, we're going to tackle a subject given to us by our friends Autocratic and Runeslinger at autocratic.com. Because this is for the uplifting of the community, to entertain you, to inspire you, possibly to educate you. Today's topic is Stature. Now, stature is oftentimes a value. If you have high stature, maybe it's physical height. Maybe that's what we're discussing. But in terms of today, what I'm going to talk about instead is stature in terms of greatness. What do I mean by greatness? Well, one game in the RPG community considers itself the greatest game of all time. And quite honestly, it has facts and numbers to back that up. Dungeons & Dragons, owned by Wizards of the Coast, owned by Hasbro, is the greatest role-playing game of all time. If you consider sales, absolutely. D&D has sold more product than any other game company by a very wide margin. There's only been really one time in history where it's been, one would say, eclipsed by another company. That lasted for a while until they scrapped the edition of the game they were using, and once it changed, people poured in, and they're once again quite firmly on top. And not going to say much more about that. They've earned a place of respect as far as longevity goes. Being the first certainly has helped. So from 1974 on up to the present day, they've been there selling product, getting new fans, and today it's a juggernaut. There's celebrities that are excited about the game. There's so much that's out there. There are movies being made and shows being discussed, and it dominates a lot of the topic and conversation within the RPG community. But I'm here to tell you, as monumental as it seems, it's not the only game. It's not, quite honestly. There are a lot of different role-playing games out there. And the one that is at the very top, while it is a very good game, and I will never knock it, it is kind of trendy these days to be knocking Dungeons & Dragons and saying, oh, it's a terrible game, I would never play it. You won't hear that from me. It's not terrible. It has its flaws, however, and many of those are tied into its style and its design. Some people will like different games, and there are certain types of genre or particular game concepts that perhaps the Dungeons & Dragons mold doesn't fit perfectly, and other game systems may do a better job of it. And, of course, your personal tastes may vary. People will probably see this video and think, I don't like Dungeons & Dragons, or I tried playing Dungeons & Dragons and it just didn't speak to me, or something like that. Well, here's the good news. There are plenty of other games out there. They are in the shadow, perpetually, of Dungeons & Dragons. You can't get into that tent under which RPGs exist. The tent pole is Dungeons & Dragons. There's no avoiding it. But you can find a lot of good value in the margins. And I would urge you to keep your eyes not necessarily peeled to the top. Because Dungeons & Dragons will preen and prance and look pretty. But ultimately, if you have a taste for something else, something else indeed. You might be able to find the different experiences that you can get from different games to be very attractive. And today I'm going to show you a couple of options for you out there. Something that you might see and you might like and go, how about that? But I can assure you, for every game that I show you here, there are hundreds of other games that are available. I can't show you all of them. And I'm not going to show you my entire collection. Satisfying as that might be, just look at the shelves behind me. Those are all game books. Everything around me are role-playing game books. I've got bookshelves along one whole side of this room. If you watch other videos, you may see some of those. I will be bringing forth these games to show you, to tempt and tantalize you with these other offerings to show you what is available. But for now, I'm just going to show you a couple sample items. So, shall we? First game I'll show you is a game that I'm actually playing right now, which makes me extremely excited. As an eternal game master, I'm always running a game or two here and there, but I actually get to play, and I'm so excited. This is the 5th edition of Shadowrun. Now, Shadowrun is an interesting game. It blends cyberpunk. People love cyberpunk, right? Well, this has cyberpunk elements in it, but it also has magic and an alternate timeline that even though the era is 2085, the world has changed. Magic has come back into the world. It has changed many of the people in the world so that now orcs and trolls and dwarfs and elves walk alongside of humanity. The corporation theme of cyberpunk is very much there. There are mega corporations now that have as much power as nations do in some places and jurisdictions. And your characters are generally Shadowrunners who move within the cracks of the system, doing things that the corporations can't do for themselves, or maybe the government, maybe concerned wealthy citizens, whatever. However you get a paycheck. But oftentimes illegal, maybe morally questionable things that you do on these Shadowruns to prosper, however you define prosperity. It's very much a game of your character having style and flash and personality that gets them by in a world where huge moving trolls with big guns soaking up incoming attacks and being truly terrible to go up against exist right alongside of the actual tanks that the corporations might use. You glide through the shadows. Rarely do you win when you get into a standing fight with corporate powers because they can bring a lot more power to bear than you. But there's also magic that might give you an edge. Maybe you're a mage or have a mage in your group, and all of a sudden, one well-placed fireball or stun ball might loosen up a whole lot of opposition. Or maybe you can make individual people invisible, and that's going to throw a wrench into the works. Shadowrun is a fantastic game. Matrix runs. Rigging where you can control drones and vehicles with cyberware connected to your brain. Those are all cool elements of Shadowrun. Character creation has been loosened up to the point where it's not, well, if you've heard some things about Shadowrun, it used to be a little bit more arcane and I dare say a little clunky, but it has evolved quite a bit. And this version is pretty smooth and tight. So, I love Shadowrun. I endorse it to anybody who's interested. They're currently up to their 6th edition, but I'm playing in 5th edition, so that's the book I had. So there's one shout out for you. Not all games are huge monolithic works. Shadowrun can be a bit overwhelming for people, considering you have to learn a whole new existence that's in front of your characters, in dealing with magic and metahuman races and the technology of the time can seem a little bit overwhelming. Sometimes you want something a little bit simpler, or a lot simpler, but with different ideas than what just walking down the street might be. So to this I would point you at something like Vast Grimm. Now Vast Grimm uses a mechanic from a game called Mork Borg, which is a very simple game that has its roots in early versions of Dungeons and Dragons. That game has spread with many ripples over the clear pond of role-playing games. And some of those lap up against games like Vast Grimm. This is a game of horror, though. As you might guess from our little toothy friend here on the front cover, it's a game about humanity being erased. And at its absolute near end, as it is about to be devoured by aliens calling themselves the Grim, or we call them the Grim. I don't know what they call themselves. They were unlocked because a madman opened the wrong door, and they are spreading everywhere. You can fight against the Grim, absolutely. You may even pray that you have some chance of winning, unlikely as that is. But a lot of the focus on this story is trying to head to a place where you can escape with a kernel of humanity. I believe it's called the Gate of Infinite Stars. And if you can find that, you can win. Good luck. The odds are long against you. Fights are often brutal, and your characters are quite honestly woefully underprepared for the kind of opposition that you probably will face. So, brains are your best way of going about, not taking on every foe with a determination to destroy it. Knowing when to run, knowing how to even the odds. Those are all incredibly important things on horror-style games like Vast Grimm. And again, if your game master doesn't really want to go with a possible scenario to get you out, your characters won't. They'll struggle as long as they can until they die or the game ends. For some people, this is raw, visceral role-playing at its finest. Taking a character that is not necessarily a destined hero and eventually steering them to their inevitable success. No. This is a dark, gritty universe where your characters are very likely to die. And not die gloriously, die in some dark alley or half-lit hallway while being surrounded by the Grim or any of the other monsters that are there in the setting. So, yeah, if you like that idea of playing something that is spooky, scary, and a bit grisly, Vast Grimm might be the game for you. Do you like video games? Hey, many video games are role-playing games as well, or maybe they came from role-playing games. In this particular case, though, I have Fallout, the role-playing game. This is the starter set, which is ideal for getting into a role-playing game, dipping your toe into the pond and having a fun adventure, specially sculpted by the creators of the game to show off all the different elements of their game. This one was made by the creators Modifius under license from Bethesda, who owns Fallout. Don't worry, it's not as janky as a Fallout game. But it lets you play as a survivor, a wilderness explorer of sorts, or any other experience that you're interested in having in the world of Fallout. Oftentimes you are going to be out in the wasteland of what's left over of perhaps the United States, or maybe you're going to go farther afield, but the general themes are exploration, challenge. There are monsters out there, and a lot of them. The world is a dangerous place, but also you can find or manufacture the things that can keep you alive. It is grim, it is dark, but with a certain whimsical sense of humor and the odd repeating trend of a kind of 50s that never was, it can be a fantastic game, especially if you add a little bit of a soundtrack to it to kind of keep the vibes going. Just go to YouTube, honestly, and hit Fallout music, and you'll find all kinds of good stuff. But this is a game that lets you be the hero and share it with a group of friends. And if you want to get into something like that, yeah, there's books for it and support. Starting with a starter set like this, though, it's a great way to get into a game. It's less expensive oftentimes than a core rule book, and it lets you have maybe some specialty dice, maybe some pre-generated characters, an adventure to play that, again, is usually tied in and helps not only the players to understand how a game like this works, but also first-time game masters, because they want you to be as successful as you can be, too, so that everybody enjoys it and wants to play again. So this would be another great example of a game that might speak to you because of something that you love and can bring in the role-playing version of it. My final offering for you is a personal interest, perhaps. I love Arthurian legends. King Arthur, his knights, the world that he lived in, the not true to history but close elements that exist in King Arthur. Also magic. Yep. Merlin, the magical sword Excalibur or Caliburn, all kinds of wondrous things. The Green Knight who could survive having his head cut off. There were some fantastic myths. Well, there's a role-playing game for that, wouldn't you know? This is Pendragon. This is the starter set again, but the actual book is rather substantial. This, again, has elements for playing in the world of King Arthur. Letting the world live and breathe around you with Arthur and his knights all over the landscape. You can meet the knights if you are so lucky, but you don't have to. You can just be in that world of Arthurian England, and possibly beyond, exploring the foothills of Avalon, or going out into a battle between King Ban of Benwick and some rival knave who is stirring up problems on his borders. You could do all sorts of things in this magical world. But it also gives you the feeling of just being a knight, being trusted by a noble to carry on their banner, to fight for chivalry and glory and honor. This is a wonderful game that allows you to do this. This is made by Chaosium, the same company that makes Call of Cthulhu or RuneQuest. It uses their core system in it, and by learning this, you'll actually have a leg up on learning several other games that use the same system, which is kind of cool. But Pendragon is possibly one of the most in-depth and detailed games about playing in Arthurian England. And I, again, would definitely endorse this kind of game if that's a passion that you have. Those are all games that have a certain status within the gaming sphere. Ones that are made by companies that are well-known and respected, like Modiphius and Chaosium. Sure, they enjoy an elevated stature, and they will have advertising. They will oftentimes have a premier spot on the racks of gaming, a store that actually has games other than Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. They also have extra materials that they make for them. Modules, source books, alternate players guides that may give you new abilities and possibilities and advantages and options that you can, enjoy the full experience of playing a role-playing game. And if perchance you really do have your heart set on the Dungeons and Dragons style of fantasy, there's 31 flavors of that, spread across many different companies, many different brands. For example, a company called Necrotic Gnome created a game called Old School Essentials, which plays like an old version of Dungeons and Dragons from back in the 80s, and works very hard to preserve that style of gameplay with their basically refreshing reorganization of the rules of that older system in a nice, neat package to make it easier to run and play. If you want that experience, you may have an easier time finding these modern offerings than you could have finding the old stuff and trying to run that too. So this is all things that at this wonderful time in role-playing games, there's all kinds of options out there, all with maybe differing statures. But if you just look down a little bit, not at the ones that get all the press, but the cracks in between, you can find some dynamic and exciting games that might tickle your fancy a little bit more than perhaps the industry leader. Now, by all means, enjoy Dungeons & Dragons. It's a great game, and you'll find a lot of other people who will want to play it with you. But if you do kind of start to feel a little, it's the same game from level 5 to level 15, the numbers get bigger. Maybe you want something with a different challenge, a different aesthetic. They exist. And I highly encourage you to go out and find them. There are beautiful games, there are horrible games, there are wonderful games, there are terrible games. And stick with me, and I'll try to introduce you to as many as I possibly can. But that takes us to the end of this session of RPGaDay. Thank you for joining me. I am the Dungeon Tutor, and I hope to see you in the next video. If I do, then between that happy day and now, I hope that you, yes, you, get a chance to roll some dice, play some games, have some fun. But stay safe out there, friends. Until that next time, farewell.